at the hospital. And whilst during my hospitalization, I also encountered very friendly and compassionate, nursing staff and medical doctors. And this next poem, which I call Sister Swang's Swagger, is is tribute to Sister Maswanganyi, who I found to be very supportive. On my first night of hospitalization at Tihlùngù. Sister Swang's Swagger. Sister Swang sees light in mutilated souls and lame limbs. That stubborn dread that can't be undone, life slipping out. He sees life in stiffening muscle cramps, heavy as unbreakable ice, bodies melting, sinking in rickety beds, life capitulating. He feels bone marrow injects blood in dry and smashed bones, in retiring organs that are picking up, returning home. Sister Swang's knows shattered bones must be collected, molded and mended. Torn ligaments and tendons rested and iced. Whipped and chained innocence freed with glowing floodlight love. He fishes out life in the dried up pond, where skaters and swim bakers fly away, leaving the fish to flap its tails and swish fins in the mud flow. He stands beside the rails of patience, birds and smile, switching from Xitsonga to Tshivenda with ease. He lifts off the burdens of our unbearable pains and the lead of fear and doubt among us who talk in silence, making us believe in what we are ashamed to admit. Sister Swang sees life in aged and frozen faces, faces ripped apart by relentless pains, faces arrested by fear and terror. He sees life in dimmed eyes that count the patients, birds, and curtains in the hospital room, eyes fixed on the roof panels, eyes that hold sorrow like a howler upon its shoulders, eyes that weep like the tired linoleum floor, a red field of corpses, the floor that absorbs our threshing, dusting, and utter frustration, a pool of poo and pee. Sister Swang sees life in us who stare at the leaking ceiling at night, hoping stars will shoot or the moon shine, but instead the super Ghana sun melts our hopes. My wearied eyes drag me up and down. I watch the dark colors of the walls and its columns. I see helpless Jesus on the crucifix, reminding me that I'm not spared of death. Sister Swings rushes to help a skinny frame whose swollen throat is closed. Man on the canvas, knocked down by the hard knocks of master sickness, battling to cough and cry. His ravaged chest is clogged. The man with a catheter hanging off the side of his bed desperately needs an oxygen mask, steroids, and epinephrine. The man with the stuttering engine has given in to life's torrents, but before his life takes a turn for the worse, Sister Swangs resuscitates him, calm as a stream, cool as a cucumber. That's why I like his swagger, my angel. Yeah, so it's not everyone's dream to be hospitalized, but when you are faced with such a gruesome kind of experience, you've got to live and depend on hope. And if you are surrounded by people who care, like Sister Swanks, I was able to at least hang on to my dear life. Yeah. So not all is lost in hospitalization. Last year, I got a chance to be invited to China together with a group of South African poets. One of them, Xolisi Nyezwa, Jacques, you read some of his poems, and the other poet was, Mangaliso Buzani, Alfred Schaffer, and Enoch Shishenga, among others. So, I got lost at West Lake, which is one of the famous attractions in China, in Hangzhou. And, when you get lost in China, you just don't know what's next, but that getting lost inspired me to compose this poem, Lost at West Lake, 19 July 2024. It's a hot sunny day. Water birds swim leisurely. The brown electric cruise boat has left us behind. I and my socialist compatriot walk around the famous lake. But in this picturesque valley of rolling mountains and limestone hills, it is permissible to wander and get lost. I'm lost, we are lost. My head spins, I don't know where I am going. Where is the end of this dredged lake? All the poets and officials in blue tags and white golf shirts have vanished. And I don't have a Chinese SIM card. And my phone battery is dead. No one can reach me. And I've left my passport in the room. By Jui, please come, poet maestro and ex-governor, you who built the causeway with the silt from the lake, to hold back and store up the lake water. Take me to Hotel Hangzhou. Let your savvy eye guide me to the shore. Sushi, poet maestro, I want to hear your voice. The clouds are forming up in the sky. It's hot and musky. Climate change is weakening us. I'm drenched in sweat. My legs are wobbly. Please come, sing me poems of the freshwater lake. Sing me poems about the lotus and silk. Sing about the green duckweed and water lilies, about crinoids and ammonites, about scrotos and pagodas, about monks and nuns in kasaya robes, falling on their knees, chanting mantras as the wind blows across the land. I want nothing else but to hear your voice as you hold my hand, heading home to Hotel Hangzhou, the people's policeman in his dark olive green uniform notices two bewildered black men from Africa. They can't speak English. We wink, squint, blink, and speak with eyes and hand signs. He guides us to our boat so we can move across the shore, climb rocky steps, and join other poets learning to etch and grave memories on stone. So it's nice to get lost in China. So one of the places that I think everyone wants to visit when they end up in China is the Great Wall of China. And my visit there, together with other poets from the BRICS countries, inspired this poem. It's relatively long. I hope I will have the stamina to read all of it. A day at the Great Wall of China. This, 23rd July 2024. The morning rises like a flower opening its petals. I need to collapse a mountain breakfast to climb a mountaineering wall. Steamed stuffed buns, congee, boiled eggs and vegetables, and rice, nuts, soup, bananas, and sweet potatoes, bamboo shoots, and of course, green tea. The wall is high, long, and steep. It is not for a groaning and roaring stomach, not for the faint-hearted. Never mind. I don't need a helmet, hammer, crampons, no ropes. I'm not climbing the Himalayas. the leopard is climbing a vertical wall. Yes, enough bottled water will keep me fresh and active. It will flush bodily waste, keep my joints greased. I don't need sunscreen, sunglasses, and umbrella against the sun. I don't need shade. After all, I'm black with enough melanin. Climb, Bila. My right femur is patched with metal rods, screws, pins, and a long nail. Will my stiff legs carry me over the strenuous zigzagging terrain? Will my left leg that hosts a scowling bullet in its bone carry me through the bushes and trenches without biting? Will my right hand, inserted with pins, plates, bone graft, rods, and bolts, manage to hold on to the walls when I stagger and fall? Climb, Bila. Wobbly feet shuffle like a wounded kung fu dragon. My sneakers grip firmly on the asymmetric stone floor as I negotiate my way to the top of this treacherous caving trench of rising stairs and falling steep slopes and tall steps. I imagine grunting wild boars and dead living spirits of soldiers and slaves whose blood and sweat built the walls and injected eternal life. Climb, Bila. Though my feet like sand, know I can never reach the end of this dream. This long, majestic wall, my heart's feet can never tire from walking and climbing. Sweat drips through every pore and valve. My body is a river whose banks have burst and succumbed to floods. My brown African dashiki print shirt is drenched. My heart is stomping in my throat, huffing and panting like a dog. I march on, left, right, climbing the zigzagging wall, touching the glistening eye of the smiling sky, hugging the evasive clouds and rain. Climb, Bila, despite the dizzying heights and the cramps that torture and sting my muscles. I sip bottled alkaline water, and like Bruce Lee, the karateka, who taught us to survive in all weathers in this scorching heat, I'm water, my friend, and if the poets leave me behind, I'll live in the mountains with the long badger and Chinese peasant, and the wild boar and African hoopoe, eat wild berries and bugs until I find my way to Jinggo Garden Hotel Beijing, 17 Jian'an Avenue, Dongdan, here in this bustling city. Climb the stairs, son of a peasant. Brick by brick I pause, goggling down at the thick vegetation. In my dreamland of exhaustion, I see soldiers one by one, in a line, in a file, laying a foundation, then cutting stones and bricks to size, then building a long weather-resistant wall to hide out, keep away the foul air of invaders, defending the homeland against intruders, pirates and slick thieves of silk. A big-bodied woman named Lizzie clings to the slates, sits on the steep slope in a pink dress, crosses her legs on the hard floor. Her eyelids shiver. Perhaps she's dizzy or under the weather, perhaps stoned and drunk, or maybe something with limbs is growing in the belly. I squint, shut my eyes like a dying candlelight in the dark. Just one wrong foot and a lapse of mind, Lizzie will tumble down into the jungle, crash like a falling metado. She will be airlifted by the cable car or helicopter, riding a buckling of bodacious bull, a breath short-lived as a butterfly's. Misty-eyed crows will hover above our heavy heads, sing hymns and chant psalms of sorrow. Circle of dust will fly up in the air. Lizzie will be a wailing echo, a lost wandering shadow. She will whistle in the dark jungle, hiss in the underwater twilight, stir up waters. Lizzie will be a shimmering maid in the lagoon, living among dragons and humps with humps that trudge and gallop on twisting roads and black tunnels among giant rats and chirping creep of geckos and a lounge of clicking lizards. I walk past Lizzie, climb the crumbled wall. It delights in the blossoming yellow flowers and the bowing watch towers, fortresses, and horse tracks. I see through its holes, its huge sunken eyes, down the greenery. China, my friend, why do you build a wall? When there are caves, mountains, tree trunks, and bushes to hide. When guns, daggers, spears, clubs, arrows, and sword of Goijian have no brain. When skylarks and buntings do not need permission to migrate and fly past the infinite skies, mountains, rivers, and oceans. When tunas and sharks, swordfish and billfish migrate from river to river, canyon to canyon, stream to stream, pond to pond, bay to bay, sea to sea, ocean to ocean, throughout the seasons, seeking food and rest. When a gust of wind cuts through cracks and valves of the wall, watchtowers and fortresses, when a colony of ants can defeat a parade of elephants without wielding a sword nor brandishing an axe, when an earthquake and volcano flatten hands of 1,000 years' labor, leaving behind debris, blazing fires and blackened sky, when nature is vast and love plentiful, without boundaries. Climb, Bila. Look at the rainbow above the sky, above the clouds. Look down from the watchtowers and fortresses. People are hiking, trekking, and camping against the torrential rains and storms. Colorful people relax in the wall. Couples walk, hold hands, and like Siamese twins in unity, they reach the sky. Their eyes hold each other. Nations bury the history of hatred. Come winter, come snow or fog, come sleet or sunshine, I'll return to the Great Wall of China. I will walk and climb with bare hands and feet without tiring. I will return to the Great Wall of China. When unpredictable spiders and beetles lurk around, when hornets and paper wasps lurk, when the walls dress in the whirling snow garment, when the mountains and walls are blackened, blanketed by snow jackets, when the long grasses, vast plains, and rocks are gray, when the travelers wear ear flaps, scarves, jackets, and gloves, I'll return to hug the Great Wall of China, caress its full breast and cuddle its back. I'll return to climb the wall like a mountaineer, full of stamina and balance. For within these endless walls dwell endurance and hope, love and satisfaction overflow. As we head towards the skyscraping hotel, we sing aloud like happy soccer fans in the poet's bus. We burst in melodies only familiar to us, but so sweet to all our ears. Songs from Cairo and Addis Ababa, songs from Tehran and Sao Paulo, songs from Johannesburg and Delhi. We sing and mumble in Arabic and Amharic. We sing and mutter syllables in Persian and Portuguese. We rant and chant in Zulu and Tsonga boisterously. Songs so moving, ebbing and gliding like waves, voices massaging my sun-baked body, and my heart soars. Suddenly, the bus driver slams the brakes without flinching. I nod and hum like a talking drum. The wall is my shade, a traveling blanket, radiating warmth near and far. Now I've returned home to South Africa, to my dog-eat-dog shack land, my famished and shackled existence. I've decided to build a wall here with bricks on stones of love, for all creatures, races and reptiles, birds, rats and cats, doves and wood thrushes, tortoises, peacocks, wolves and sheep. It is a wall for infants and toddlers, for the young and elderly to find their rooms, rest their back-bending burdens. It is a wall of solace and peace on which fear and hate are flawed down on the canvas like a befuddled boxer. It is a breathing wall where we will live forever, like polar bears and rabbits under the spring moonlight and falling stars. Something I really found fascinating whilst I was in China is the humility of the Chinese. So the next poem is called Shafa's Bracelet. Yeah, Shafa's Bracelet. The fellow poet Shafa had bought the bracelet, and he left it, in Hangzhou, and we're traveling to Beijing, which is about 1,000 kilometers or so. So this poem recounts the kind of experience that I found to be so fascinating. Shafa's Bracelet. A man without a smiling face must never open a shop. So this is the Chinese proverb. Let me repeat that again. A man without a smiling face must never open a shop. Shafa takes a taxi to the market in the bustling city of Hangzhou. Late at night, street lights are still bright, and hundreds of shops are open in the early spring. Bewildered tourists buy mugs, postcards, keychains, figurines, coffee, IT gadgets, and headphones as souvenirs. Shafa buys a bracelet for his daughter. Not pricey pearls, not a shining diamond ring, but a special Chinese crafted bracelet. He knows no terrestrial bird returns to the nest without seeds, worms, or insects for the nestlings. The poets leave Hangzhou for Beijing. We board a bullet train that covers 1,200 kilometers in 4.5 hours. We arrive in Jiangzhou Hotel, safe and sober. But Shafa has left the bracelet behind in Hangzhou. Never mind, he will buy another one or find another souvenir in the new city. The next day, in the morning, while Shafa is preparing to go for breakfast, a phone rings in the bathroom. It's not a wake-up call from switchboard. The receptionist simply has some good news. Sir, a messenger is coming to your room. Knock, 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 knock. Here is your parcel. A beaming smile flickers across the messenger's face. It's a bracelet that Shafa left in Hangzhou. Yet the messenger traveled over 1,200 kilometers, whether by speed train or flight or bus or taxi, but like a terrestrial bird that carries a gift, a locust or worm for its nestling, the messenger carries a smile, like a good shopkeeper. As Shafa recounts this story, I sigh like a soft sea breeze. Wow, this country knows what it means to plant and nurture a tree of love. Where I come from, things are out of hand. Nothing that goes missing is ever returned. Nimble-fingered guests pilfer towels and bathrobes in hotels and motels. Township thugs haul wet laundry from washing lines in broad daylight and sell it in the next street to drink liquor and smoke zol. Shoplifters hide cold meat and wine in the bushes of pleasure. Men with deep pockets build high walls and install barbed wire and keep pit bulls to breathe fresh air. Guns are pillows covered with tears. Camera eyes hover in open and hidden spaces. But the scoundrels are always on the prowl. They know they hold the nation by the balls, and the police who are supposed to be on the front line backpedal, leaving drug peddling barons free. Where I come from, the wheels are off, the body is torn apart. Nurses run pharmacies in kitchens, dispensing panados and pain blocks. The desperate collect and swallow phlegm, nasal mucus, and earwax with the hope to contract HIV and receive a SASA grant when they start coughing, like groaning trucks. Where I come from, the wheels are off. Corpses go missing in morgues. Ducks, large corpses with fallen teeth are exhumed. Coffins and bones stolen and sold in the street. Yet my people still talk of Ubuntu. So when I think of Shafa's bracelet and the smiling messenger, I say out loudly, despite overcrowding and pollution at their cities, despite their internet restrictions and many other restrictions, nothing supersedes this overflowing love beaming on the glowing faces of the Chinese. Yeah, so my next poem, it's also inspired by my visit to China, and it's called For 10 Days. For 10 days, I waited at airports OR Tambo in Johannesburg, Hamad in Doha, Pudong in Shanghai, Beijing New Airport, pushing trolleys through travelators and escalators, carrying bags over creaky stairs and steps. Watch the young crouching on skateboard ramps, lingering and loitering, guarding luggage against nimble-fingered creatures, stripping my handbag to be searched, wrapping bags with plastic, checking in my huge push bag, watching screaming flight schedules on screens, waiting at boarding gates, act by flight delays, scared to nap on steel benches, drinking herbal teas and chewing bubble gum, running and peeing in tidy loos, cleaned by black slaves, grabbing blueberry muffins, croissants, and donuts, and getting bloated, buying flu medicines and swallowing vitamin C and sneezing, unbelting and taking off my shoes as ordered by unsmiling cold cops, watching worshippers in white robes sniffing for safe corners to meditate, hoping not to lose my passport, boarding pass, and myself, wishing for a massage by the gentle hands of a young lady with dimples and fresh perfume, wishing to work out at the gym until my stomach is flat like a slab. But here I am, a cashless traveler, lingering and limbering. For 10 days to China and back, I drank gallons of water, flushed all types of waste from my kidneys. It was a sweltering summer in Doha. The plane tilted and circled in arc like a swelling Shibelani dance, shaking and twirling. And when I stepped out of the aircraft, the sun and her cousins had stoked a huge fire, a conflagration. The temperature soared above 40% Celsius. Crazy humidity bent my skin rough like leather. Soaked hot air hit my empty face and I saw stars. I imagined blue blank-eyed pilgrims in Mecca who had collapsed in droves because of the intense heat, organs giving up, dying during the Hajj pilgrimage, dying in the land of Muhammad. After 10 days, I took the plane from Hangzhou to Beijing, barely held tight as the hissing train inched over the tracks like a dashing mamba. Mirrors and the curved windows became blurred and blind. The landscape shrunk like a mopani worm, throat and jaws gripped by the claws of nausea. Yet the ride was like a flower moon riding in a dream or dancing to a talking drum underwater. Now I've returned to Africa, sane and sober. I imagine a bullet train grinding the rail tracks from Johannesburg to my rural birthplace, inching and rolling through the bushveld and open savanna. But as I weave these lines, there is not even a goods train to Elim. There's no road, highway, no bypass in Elim. In the dark night, we trudge on zigzagging cattle paths with blind curves. We are squeezed like sardines in moving coffins called minibuses. We collide with donkeys on potholes deep as graves. Government junkies visit Shanghai and Tokyo. They learn how to organize reliable public transport. Yet they return home to duck and dive, carry on with the looting of state coffers until there's nothing left to loot, their fingers stuck like super glue in the till. So my last poem is called Under Rubble. I wrote it because I think it's a necessary poem I think it's a necessary poem to pay homage to the struggles that are happening around the world. And I was invited to write this poem by Aryan Kaganov, who's doing a special edition on Gaza. So I decided to write this poem, and so hopefully to be published in the magazine, in the online magazine, Harry. Under rubble, a rubble-strewn wasteland stands lonely, high as a sad mountain. These hills of waste are not an archaeological site, nor ruins of ancient civilization, nor a result of an earthquake, nor a volcanic ash. They are rubble, built by a barbarous regime. Its warmongering dogs devour flesh with tank and rifle fire and bunker buster bombs, turning swathes of Gaza into a ghost town. Under this rubble, the land scarred by bombings and sieges, dwell entombed bodies, trapped by the steel and falling rocks. Maggots and botflies feed on rotting flesh and skeletonized bodies. Lovers hold each other tightly, hug and kiss for the last time, but the rubble shakes non-stop. A holy priest gets down on his knees, crouches and recites prayers incessantly, hoping for pockets of air to find him alive before he is buried with his holy book. Under these hills of debris, encircled by chain link and barricades, tunnel rats burn alive, digging survivors out of the rubble and pits, amputating the dead to free the gasping. Tunnel rats dig through rocks and boulders, cut through river, helmets strewn over there, gloves and boots over there. Visibility vests this way, coats that way, rescue dogs in hiding. Surely, under this great darkness, unexploded bombs and mines await detonation, and the sonic boom will not leave anyone underground alive. Under this windowless rubble, dwell busted skulls, bones and broken bones, smashed hearts and shredded lungs. Here, eyes are gouged and throats slit. Here, bodies are charred and liquefied human fat oozes. Slabs rest on chest and breast, screams are muffled. Starving babies with shouting sharp ribs weep against the hollows and dark shadows, concrete and steel rings. Here, dreams are shattered like a skull smashed apart by a sledgehammer. Even the blind cave reptile that has weathered all the war storms can see this horrendous genocide launched against the unarmed by a nation bereft of a tomorrow, carnivores deaf to pay, these land-grabbing cannibals and slaves of gluttony. Under rubble, a museum of bones shall stand, shall erect, reminding the world that Palestine is not gone, is not a hollow dream, no wasteland, but a ray of light that shines through the dark on our way back home to freedom and peace, justice and humanity. Gaza, remember Dr. Ala al-Najjar. A family was wiped out, 9 of her 10 children doomed. Their father, a husband, Hamdi, bled to death. The tenacious doctor was on a shift, treating patients with torn ligaments and broken bones at Al Tarin Hospital. Missiles stopped at a home. Habi lifted onto a stretcher. Hamdi was a medic too. A fire engulfed their house, consuming every ounce of joy, erasing memories etched in love. Smoke billowed up in the sky, bent bodies from the debris, wrapped in white sheets. Hours later, dead children arrived at the hospital. They were Dr. Najjar's own children, charred, bones screaming. Her breasts ache, nipples sting like the burning ripples of a hot spring, dripping with milk to feed her infant daughter, Sidra. But Sidra is missing. Aina Ibnati, where is my daughter? Snatched by the war crows, buried under rubble. Ala al-Najjar is a dedicated doctor, armed with penicillin and stethoscope. Her children were nestlings waiting to be fed. She hunkered down and warmed them. They were not combatants armed to the teeth with rifles and machetes. Her husband is gone. He was not a combatant, but a people's doctor. Dogs of war are at work, wailing non-stop, breaking the will of the steadfast, determined to raise Gaza to the ground. Littering streets with corpses, the halitosis forcing birds, bees, and fish to migrate to unknown lands, rivers, and seas. Gaza, dead birds rest on a broken concrete post surrounded by rubble. They are the short-toed snake eagles that feed on snakes and lizards. Is the long-legged buzzard and the beautiful hoopoe. Gaza, your birds face many struggles. They fly over a pile of garbage, feed on human carcasses. They are bombed out because cannibals no longer trust anything that crawls, hops, and jumps. Outside the rubble, dogs with glassy eyes and long, tired jaws rummage through piles of trash. Starving red kites feed on decomposing flesh. Canines once playful with raised tails and floppy ears, lolling tongues and wiggly bodies, bouncing and hopping, are now covered in mange and parasites. Hips and ribs are broken guitar strings. Dogs bite and chew their skins. Their owners are not there to remove the ticks or take them to the vet, to soak them in medicated beds and inject them with antibiotics. What will the dogs and chihuahuas eat when the streets are littered with dead bodies and the blinding halitosis? Dogs fall on their knees, mourning their departed owners buried under rubble. Outside the rubble, families queue for bread and soup, flock and run away from the noise of guns, carrying back-bending luggage with clothes they were wearing, while guns and cannons walk with them like shadows. They leave behind a hill of rubble, which was once a home full of warmth and music, food and laughter. They leave behind the aromatic mouthful. They leave behind graves of their beloved. They leave behind vineyards and olive trees. They are going somewhere, perhaps headed to Lebanon, Jordan, or Syria, Iraq, or Yemen, or Saudi Arabia, Egypt, or Chile, El Salvador, Brazil, Guatemala, or Mexico, or Honduras, Qatar, Kuwait, or Germany, Canada, or Japan, or nowhere in particular. They are going to camps of stress, fenced with razor wire, baits for hunger, where answering nature's call means stripping naked to be dissected and laughed at by buzzing flies in hazardous toilets. A limping, teary gray-haired elder falls on his knees, prays for the heavily pregnant woman whose skinny baby dangles on her exhausted back. A huge bundle of luggage weighs her head down. Soon the water will break. She will give birth to a wanted terrorist under the wild olive tree, mocked by the chattering birds and grunting monkeys. The hospitals under rubble, nurses are dead, entombed in the collapsed buildings. The brooding elderly man turns around, tears welling up in his eyes. Wadahan, bye-bye Gaza, will I ever see you again? Or will the dogs bomb me with my beloved dog to smithereens? Wadahan, bye-bye Gaza, let hunger stay at bay as I trudge through mountain slopes, resting under the oak tree, drinking spring water to converse with my ancestors. Dear God, look what the hounds are doing, opening fire in broad daylight, shattering dreams of foot-shuffling refugees, because in their lexicon, everyone in Gaza is Hamas, a tsetse fly perched on scrotum, a target to be brought down like a hippo. Dear God, your streets are a theater of death, apartheiders with unmitigated appetites for hatred and greed cannot find peace nor play golf until Gaza becomes ashes. Under rubble, spirits of the departed wail like a broken orchestra, weeping the unloved invading leader with tears of fire, pulling him this way and that way to burn in a blaze, shaving his head and beard like a captured male witch at Pafuri. The spirits of the departed drag him around the circle, shouting and drumming. The Higgs X awaits your head, you with a heart of fur, you with a heart of crocodile heart. Come and dance naked, barefoot, with black vultures, vipers, and pot-bellied hyenas. Come, dance on burning coal. Come, dance on needles and nails. You master of apartheid kak. Come, dance on blades and daggers. Come, dance over the dead bodies. Pee in their orifices. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. Come, occupy the land and rule over graves. Come, rule over bones and skulls. Come, come, and run away to the Red Sea and join other dragons underwater. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. My prayer is that from under the rubble, amidst guns and bombs, the future Gaza will rise. The bulbous Fakwa iris shall sprout, its striking blooms call bees from their hives. The glint-staining stars shall rise and shoot above the debris, while agile and sure-footed goats and fat-tailed sheep shall feed on tough plants and hardy shrubs, bleating their way to streams and gullies that ebb and gurgle down the slopes, covering gazans with hide and wool, feeding the world with milk and meat. Come spring, the children shall play in open yards, admire the shimmering blue skies, fly kites and swim in the blue of the calm sea. They will walk in the bustling markets, run barefooted in parks as the chattering rain massages their bare trunks, dismembering the rain of gunfire and the weight of shattering bones that left their famished land on crutches and walking sticks. So yeah, fellow poets and admirers of poetry, yeah, that's the end of my reading. But perhaps I should read the first poem that, you know, for whatever reason I skipped, because for anyone who comes from my town, you know, it's important that I introduce, you know, you guys to my town. So this one is called Goats in My Town. It has nothing to do with blood, with, you know, with limbs of dead people. It's got nothing to do with anything like that. It's all about goats. So, you know, maybe some sort of comic relief. Yeah. So goats in my town wander through the marketplace. They know what they are looking for. It's not coffee beans, but bananas, bananas. In many towns and cities, goats sleep on pavements and apartments. In Accra and Dakar, goats eat pineapple and drink palm oil. But the town from where the goats graze freely, not bothered by shoppers, not scared of lightning and thunder, not bothered by torrential rains, watchful of traffic and groaning buses, it's my town, Elim. Now that we have a big mall in Elim, architects have had to put fence around the mall, or else goats will stroll around gazing at ornaments and jeans, lift cabbage and spinach at ShopRite, snatch granny's bags and purses, bleating meh, 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 or simply steal a beer and get drunk. Fertile goats graze visibly outside the mall, the same goats my father shepherded in the 30s and 40s, still enjoy bananas, bananas, bringing kids to earth. These small-framed, pointed-eared goats will perhaps, wild perhaps, are merely goats, nothing more, nothing less. And these Boer goats make me smile and have helped Makholwa to find directions home. So if there's something you wish to know about my town, you know, is that my town has special goats. You can't come to Elim and not find a goat, you know? Yeah. So we are happy people at Elim. We have goats. Yeah. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share some of my poems.
Vonani, thank you for that wonderful reading. Can we have a hand of applause? Can we unmute and have a hand of applause for Vonani, please?
Wonderful.
Hey.
Really
I'm
wonderful.
going to
Vonani.
I'm going to hand over now to Megan, and for we can see the hands that are raised, and for the open mic session after the break.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to say thank you also to Vonani. That was really great. There were just some beautiful images. And I am, yeah, the potholes deep as graves and the guns like pillows covered with tears. I thought they were really lovely. And thank you for both the rubble and the Gaza and the goats. So we're ready for people who want to ask Vonani something or comment on a particular poem that was meaningful for them. Please come forward. Don't be shy. If you feel more comfortable putting your question in the chat, you can do that too. But otherwise, yeah, there we go. We've got one hand raised. I'm afraid your name is not clear to me because you're IC Pretoria.
Oh,
But please go ahead.
yeah, my name is Raphael. I've just two things for Vonani. First of all, thank you. One comment on the poem about Gaza. If Arian doesn't publish it, I will complain. I will send him a letter of complaints. He must publish it. It was extremely touching. And then just one question. We have heard this powerful sequence of new poems. Are you perhaps, Vonani, putting together a new collection? I would be looking forward if that was the case. So just that. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, Raphael, and thanks for your attendance of this reading. Yeah, I hope Arian will publish the Gaza poem, and I think it's a necessary poem that every poet should try to write, you know, if we are for justice. But of course, you know, we don't necessarily have to stand for anything as poets, but I think it would be great if we were committed to justice and yeah. I hope to find a publisher for my new work. So any publisher who's willing, you know, to take on this risk, you know, that would be wonderful. I'm saying take on the risk because, you know, when you write about Gaza and all sorts of things, then, you know, you need to be aware that, you know, the price can be heavy as well. Yeah. But, you know, yeah, but I hope I'll find a publisher. Yeah.
Thank you.
I see that Jacques has his hand up. If there are others, please do raise your hands and I'll make a note. Over to you, Jacques.
Hi, Vonani. So I loved your reading, and I enjoyed the tension between the rage that I feel and resonate with for justice in your poems, and at the same time there's a kind of merriment and you know, the quote that you have, the Chinese quote that you translated of that if you to open shop, you know, you have to have a smiling face. And there is that merriment in your poetry as well. Is that tension something you think about a lot? And do you think a lot about what the job of what your job do you have ideas about what your job as a poet ought to be? Because I know you write in a tradition of resistance. Or is it something that you don't think about so much and you write about what moves you? Sort of anything that comes up. Be interested to hear your take.
Well, thanks so much, Jacques. Yeah, I mean, I think I write about that which moves me, you know. But I think the central concern for me is that we can't ignore the miseration of, you know, people on the periphery.
Yes.
We, in as much as we need to celebrate, you know, anything that is beautiful out there, the flowers that bloom and all that, and so. So this tension, you know, I think is necessary because it keeps me alive. You know, it makes me not blinded to the beauty of the, you know, seed of freedom, you know, the freedom that does not really exist. You know,
Yes.
it makes me see the potholes in what we consider to be our freedom. And I think, you know, once you step onto that pothole, certainly, you know, you realize that you can break your leg. So that's what I think my poetry is all about. You know, yearning for justice, yearning for something desirable, because I think it's possible to build a world that is just. And poets have done that before. So and you write, keeping the resistance nature of poetry alive, I think helps us to realize that poets have a role in society. Their role is not just to be clowns, and praise singers at the expense of what should really be uttered, to inform and inspire change in society. So I hope my poetry contributes to change and transformation, not only culturally, but also ideologically.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And I love that image of the songs, that you were singing, you and your compatriots in China from all over the world. So for me, it's a wonderful image of that
Yeah.
desire to make the world to build a better world, really. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
We have time for a couple of more poems, questions on poems, or comments if people want to come forward. Ruth Emsley, you can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Timbila, for the beautiful reading, and thank you for inviting us. As you read, I'm quite astonished by the way you relate to the entity of water. I think in each and every poem that you read, there's something about water that you're talking about. So, is it a form of maybe your representation, maybe of your ancestry, of your or African identity, or does it have some sort of cleansing power or spiritual sustenance to you? Because we spoke of having water to cleanse your kidneys, water, the China wall. So what is water to you? Is it only keeping you healthy, cleaning your kidneys, or does it have some spiritual connotations or some representation of belief? Yeah, that's my question. But another thing, when you read about your trip in China, in that poem, when you read your Hangzhou to Beijing, you stressed that. And is it some sort of a geographical connection or disconnection between South Africa and China, or is it some sort of a rhythmic weight you want to put into it, or is it just a poetic device for emphasis? But in the sense, I enjoyed everything you read. Thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, Dr. Emsley. Dr. Emsley, it's my colleague at the University of Limpopo. We're in the same department, same school. So thanks so much for attending this. I don't know if I use the image of water deliberately, but I think, as you can imagine, water represents life. It's a good symbol that I think, in generations, in different traditions, it stands for something pristine and pure. But of course, water can come in different shades, can flood all our hopes, it can dash our aspirations, So I don't necessarily speak of such big water in that sense, but my connection with water, I think it's also spiritual. In my previous poems, I've always used the image of water, and I don't think it was deliberate. Where I come from, where I live in Shirley Village, there's a stream, and when I check the history of that stream, it's very connected to my ancestry. So, sometimes when I want to cleanse, when I want to find some purity and, think straight, I walk down the street and plant my feet, in that stream and, splash my face with the kind of water from the stream. So, and I don't think I do that deliberately, but for some reasons, I find myself walking down the stream and, enjoying the flowing and giggling nature of that stream. So water is life for me. I don't think I can exist without water. And more than that, we use a lot of water in my church. So, there is the kind of connection as well. The China-South Africa relations, it's very interesting. The two countries claim to be socialist, in many ways. China, has its own problems. But I think I was so inspired when I was in China, for some reasons, I did not think of so many challenges that that country, creates and is facing. Talk about Tibet and all the struggles that, we all know about China. But what I found fascinating was the care and compassion with which I was, treated, and yeah, and like in that poem, the Shafa's bracelet poem, stating that a man without a smiling face must never open a shop. For me, this image is very strong because, where we are here in this country and our various institutions I think we're running these institutions and entities without a smile. And that is the reason why these things, are collapsing, because we don't give our all, we don't give our heart to what we try to do. We don't pay attention to detail. And I think that is a difference between South Africa and China in many ways. But more than that, everything, I think hinges on humility. And I found the Chinese, to be very interesting people who are able to pay attention to detail, but they're also able to give, to really receive people well. And so I don't know what I'm talking about, but the distance between Hangzhou and Beijing, it's really massive. It's over 1,200 kilometers. And in this poem that I have rendered about Shafa's bracelet, when Shafa, left his bracelet at that hotel in Hangzhou, it only took a day for the hotel management to deliver that bracelet to Beijing over a distance of 1,200 kilometers. And I found that to be so fascinating that, in my country where I come from, nothing of that nature, easily happens. I'm not saying it can't happen, but, you really think hard for it to happen because, our hands, generally, our fingers are on the till all the time. People pilfer towels and bathrobes in hotels. And I'm using that image, to represent, the looting that is happening in the country, that, it's not only starting, as they say, that the fish starts to rot from the head, but I think in our case, every part has that kind of attraction of getting rotten, not only, from the head, but, from the tail as well. So it's head and the tail that is responsible for the decline and exhaustion that we're witnessing in this country. Yeah. So I'm using that kind of image, to say, even when we think as a country it's impossible to do certain things, we can learn from countries like China that are able to show the kind of commitment to justice, to humility, by delivering a simple item that costs less than 100 Rand over a distance of 1,200 kilometers, which is even more expensive to transport. But because of their commitment to, maintaining their integrity, I think they're able to do that. And of course, South Africa always visits China to learn, but I don't know what the country is learning, and I don't know what I learned, after visiting China anyway. I don't think I'm implementing any of those things that I learned. The Robert Barrow has been to China for a year as well. Maybe has learned something, or maybe he was not inspired enough, but I think we all go to China to be inspired, and we come home very inspired, but maybe there are certain things that we can't change, and I'm not suggesting that we should use China is a template for development. But, you know, the way they pay attention to detail, the way they keep museums, you know, museums of poetry. You have poets who have, you know, who have their own houses that are recognized by government. And I come back home and I'm trying to think, you know, of our veteran poets. You know, how do we remember our veteran poets? You know, I haven't seen any museum created in the image of, you know, some of our successful poets in across language, you know, in the country. So I think we are a people that don't pay attention to detail, and I think that is our downfall. You know, and I think if we want to move forward as a country, we need to begin to pay attention to detail. So I think that's what I'm trying to purport and, you know, raise in my work here.
Thank you, Vonani, for that. That was very interesting. We've got two hands, one from Lucy Mahlangu and one from Robert. Lucy, would you like to go first? I think you were up next.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Megan, for recognizing me. I'm a new audience member of the Red Wheelbarrow. I like the Red Wheelbarrow. Vonani is my uncle, so I am claiming him fully, totally. I am his niece. He is my mom's sister in Johannesburg, Gladys Mahlangu.
Oh,
We were actually...
lovely, Lucy. Oh, great to see you. Great to hear from
Yes,
you.
Malume.
Ah.
She was showing me your book yesterday. I think
Wow.
it's something. It's a red cover. You signed it for her. It was missing. She was looking for it everywhere. Something about
In the name of Amandla,
2013. Yeah. Yes. Wonderful reading. I am a political international relations critic, and the analogies that you've put comparing our countries to other international countries gave me a different perspective from a poet's perspective, and yet it is so real. And the questions that have come through from Dr. Amesley and all the other questions that were posed, it was almost as if I'm in an international relations lecture, yet I'm in poetry and enjoying you juxtaposing the things that you meet and conditions that you meet and comparing them to what is happening in our country and what is happening internationally, where we see diplomacy as we knew it. Now it's the diplomacy of the gun. Raise everything to the ground, start afresh. I call it the fuck diplomacy. It's the first time in the history of diplomacy where a president tells other presidents that they don't fucking know what they're doing. So we are experiencing a change that I am hoping that in the poetic and in the poetry, and I'll call it an industry for lack of a better word, but that culture of writing from the eyes and the point of view of a poet should not be lost, because at international relations we still say no, we want a diplomatic settlement, and people are dying whilst there's filibustering, whilst there's talk and an ending talk and an ending talk. So that powerful voice that mobilizes civil society, that mobilizes the conscience, that mobilizes people to say, I am analyzing this hard and sad news, but from a poet's soft point of view. And I'm not saying poetry can be soft. You are hard hitting. That pothole that's the size of a grave, Malume, just hit home. So yeah, I could go on and on and on. I'm totally inspired by your work, and look forward to coming over to Elim. Thank you.
You must come, Zara. You must definitely come. Yes, certainly poetry can't afford not to be political in the face of tyranny. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Always good to have family members supporting. Robert, you seem to have, oh no, there you are. Okay, I thought you disappeared. It's over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Megan. Yeah, I just didn't really have a question, but I just wanted to make a comment, on how your poetry strikes me. I mean, I've read it all the time, but when you read it together like that, it just seems to be very huge. The vision seems to be so enormous. It's like it kind of goes wide. It's inclusive of everything. You sort of take in geopolitical energies as well as like insects and microbes and the little creatures. It's all in the same poem, and the other it's huge. This isn't only in terms of sort of physical scale, but also in terms of kind of like emotional, spiritual scale as well, because the poems are sort of always they as we've seen from the one in the hospital, and the one about Gaza, and that there's a lot of violence and terrible stuff going on. The ones about South Africa, although they came out of the Chinese comparison, and you still manage to kind of treat these very violent kind of details with a lot of compassion. So there's a kind of a huge spiritual scale as well, without flinching from. There's a lot of observation in the poems as well. It's not like general complaining about generalized things, like corruption and this and that. It's giving us pictures, powerful pictures, and it's treating those violent things with compassion. It's really quite amazing. It's the emotional and spiritual scope and the detail of the physical observation that I find all comes together to make these very powerful, inclusive poems that speak to everybody with plain language, strong images, strong rhythms. So we just hope you carry on forever. Thanks.
Well, poets live forever. So, just one poem, I think it will make me immortal. So thanks for that, for the kind words, Rob.
Okay.
Thank you, Robert. That was, yeah, I agree. I think that was a really helpful way of looking at things and trying to identify what it is about Vonani's work that speaks to us and makes it so involving and gets us thinking. I think that we might have reached the end of our Q&A session, unless there's anybody who wants to get up their courage and say something at the last minute. If we have come to the end, we're going to have a 3-minute comfort break, and then we will have the open mic part of the meeting. So I don't see any hands, so I'm just going to say thank you once again to Vonani for the really great reading. And hope to see you all on the other side of the 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you so much, Megan and Jacques, and the Red Wheelbarrow Poetry Collective, and of course, all the poets who've gathered in the house tonight.
Wonderful.
Oh, okay.